2 was good, 3 is better. Now Notre Dame will go for 4. This is Irish Illustrated's instant analysis here on Monday. Just steps outside Notre Dame Stadium. And of course, as always, brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and Northern Indiana Event Center in Elkhart, Indiana. I'm John Brice, joined on my right by Tim O'Malley, my left, Drew Mentock. Drew, we'll start with you. Marcus Freeman today, we just wrapped up his press conference availability, talking at length about penalties. First called them selfish and aggressive penalties, then clarified to say selfish, I don't mean undisciplined. Notre Dame had an uncharacteristic amount of undisciplined penalties on Saturday. Already steps in place to get that improved.
Yeah, absolutely. As we discussed on Saturday after the game, they had 11 penalties, I believe it was, for 112 yards, which they had 118 yards coming into that game in the first 4, so that was pretty significant. And yeah, he clarified the undisciplined penalties were false starts, holding calls, things that weren't about being aggressive. They were maybe a lack of focus or things that you can clean up. But he pointed out specifically Luke Talich's little hold. He's like, you get a little jersey on there, I'm okay with that. He also touched on KVA's penalty where he got roughing the passer for reaching for the ball and he accidentally hit the quarterback in the head. Those type of things, he says, we can live with those. Those are trying to make a play. It's the other ones that we need to get taken care of. And for the most part this year, he felt like they hadn't committed those.
Yeah, and 12 penalties for 111 yards, as you noted, almost equaling Notre Dame's yardage output from the beginning of the season. A lot of good on Saturday in the win, T.O., particularly at the linebacker position, something we had touched on leading into that game. But Marcus expounded on that today, saying we have 5 that can play. We have 4 that arguably should never leave the field. It's a great position for Notre Dame to be in. It's a great, I don't want to say luxury because they've worked hard to create this luxury, but it's a great environment.
Yeah, and I want to quickly go back to the penalties because it happens every fall. In 2023, they had 10 penalties against North Carolina State for over 100 yards. Against Louisville last year, 8 or 9 penalties, all undisciplined penalties. It's going to happen to you once. Yeah. You just got to survive it. Louisville was the one they almost didn't survive, so that's important. The linebackers, I really like the question by Eric Hansen because there's been a pretty steady stream of how come they're not making as many plays as last year, how come they're not making as many plays as last year. Well, first of all, you do need a defensive interior in front of you to make plays. But this was one of the best games by the linebackers. It was definitely Jalen Steed's best game in I don't know when, and we have that on our podcast question. KVA isn't really had a poor game, but he was impactful in this game. If it wasn't for Leonard Moore, Kingston Viliamu would have been the defensive MVP of this game. As Tim Priester has pointed out, Jaden Osbury's, this is game 5. He's been good in 4.5 of the 5 games, and I think Drake Bowen has made far more plays than people want to credit him for. Obviously, we remember one he did not. This group of linebackers is, when teams go the 12 package like Boise State did, I think that's a mistake. I do not think you want that third linebacker on the field. You want to put Notre Dame out there, especially since DeVonta Smith is not available at nickel this week.
Yeah, and I think Boise State did that so much both because of its own personnel and it was seeking anything it could do to keep Notre Dame's offense off the field. Drew, I'm going to come to you about rush lanes in just a moment because that's something you and I touched on at length in overtime on Saturday. But I want to note DeVonta Smith officially ruled out for this game with that right calf strain. At this point in time, there's a number of reasons that makes sense. But if you're Notre Dame, you hope by resting him this week that you can have a chance to have him back against USC the following week. That's when you should probably need him more. Noah Burnette still questionable this week. Some really great questions there from Tim Priester about managing that process, and we'll dive more in depth on that in this afternoon's Irish Illustrated Insider. But in the meantime, Marcus Freeman saying that he wants to narrow down the competition by midweek, basically, and have a guy selected either between Marcello Diomede and freshman Eric Schmidt. So an interesting note there. He said, look, this is the program that challenges everything, and we want competition. That competition is not helping us right now. Drew, on the pass lanes, competition helped Notre Dame because it was smart in the way it competed Saturday. They held those rush lanes, something you and I discussed at length about the Irish win on Saturday. And then we heard Marcus Freeman talk about it today.
Yeah, absolutely. And he did kind of echo what we said, where even when the guys got into the backfield, they weren't running way past the quarterback. I think there was one maybe earlier where Rubio kind of did, and then you saw Boubacar Traore kind of fill that lane and get a shoestring tackle and still get the play. But for the most part, they're not rushing past it. And I think you also noticed, too, that when defensive ends do that in particular, the tackles let them do it. And I think that's a really significant sign. And that's something that they really got to even be better about this week against NC State quarterback C.J. Bailey, which Marcus Freeman touched on. He said he is a true passer. He wants to throw the ball, but he's not somebody you can just let run because he'll make you pay.
Speaking of unique offensive sets, T.O., you ask about the evolution of the Wildcat. What is the next step? Do they have to make C.J. Carr a wideout? Pretty candid answer from Marcus Freeman.
Yeah, I've talked to his previous Notre Dame defensive coordinators on this, which I find interesting. You know, what does the Wildcat do to you? How does it challenge you? He's like, look, if you don't have a quarterback, we're just coming. I mean, they're just coming at you. Even with maybe, I could see 3rd and goal at the 1-yard line. You don't need a quarterback, I don't think. I think other places on the field you do. But if you want to be a true power team, and you have 6 offensive linemen and 2 tight ends and Jeremiah Love back there and 1 wideout, I think you can do that. But Freeman mentioned, look, it is evolving. He smiled because that word is probably the kind way of saying it. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. No matter what anyone has told me, I find CJ Carr's presence out there superfluous if you're going to commit to the power and just fury of Jeremiah Love. But if you're going to keep working it, you got to involve CJ Carr in something that is not lead blocking. I think they can find something for this. We've already asked about Kenny Minchey's possible presence. That changes things a little bit, I would think. They like it. As he said, we're not just doing this because we want to try something. They do think it could be a benefit of them. We'll have to monitor this game. I don't think it goes away.
Another question you asked I found very insightful. You asked about the nickel position, and not just because DeVonta Smith is out, but because Carson Hobbs has worked his way back in, and he's number 2 on the depth chart there at nickel. Why don't you just evaluate where Notre Dame is at the nickel position and then expound on what Marcus told you about Carson Hobbs' return?
Yeah, it was interesting when Hobbs was benched, because that is the word. He played 75 snaps in the first 2 games. He also disappeared from the nickel spot on the depth chart, which just never happens. They don't bother doing that. They put him as the 3rd-string corner. He's now back as the number 2 nickel for this week. Hopefully DeVonta Smith can return. It could be a more significant injury than the last one. Dallas Golden's going to start.
Right.
Carson Hobbs is 1 play away from playing USC starting nickel.
Right.
That's how I want to put it that way. So I asked Marcus Freeman, what was his reaction? Because Hobbs is a very confident, self-confident guy. Braggadocious, actually, has been told by many people, and I think we've even joked about it in the past. He said he's the fastest guy on the team. He said, look, the guy's competitive, but he is still a great teammate, and he doesn't want to be benched. He wants to be in there, but he had to accept the role he had then. He said, if you don't accept delayed gratification, you're never going to have it. This is his chance for delayed gratification. He is back at number 2. I expect Dallas Golden to take 60 of 70 snaps probably at nickel, but Carson Hobbs is the next man in, and anything can happen with 7 games to go.
We also asked Marcus Freeman today about red shirts in general, not any specific player, but we all know what we were talking about. And we also asked about the 5-for-5 potential rule that would give players 5 full years to play 5 full seasons in college. We'll have more detail on that on the website this week or on FootballScoop and, of course, on the Irish Illustrator podcast. But also, Drew, we heard Marcus talking about the emphasis of special teams very early in his press conference. And they've scored and they've impacted games, and really they've had a chance to win games all 4 seasons of Marcus Freeman's tenure because of the emphasis on special teams, because of the dynamics on special teams. What'd you take from Marcus's answer today in the way? Couple of extra points, missed extra points notwithstanding, and one was huge. Notre Dame continues to do big things on special teams.
Yeah, absolutely, and credit to you because that was your question actually that asked. So, but he gave a good response, and I think we're not unfamiliar with him praising Coach Biaggi and how he gets buy-in from his team, and we see the chaos he creates with some of his trick plays, and even against Arkansas, just wanting to get that on tape and knowing that now teams have to prepare for that type of fake punt, or what would they do on punt block. But I think it's good that he keeps echoing the buy-in from the players. He's like, now we aren't demanding that starters be on those teams. We're not demanding Brice Young, now that he's a starter, stay on punt block. Those guys want to do that, and they're demanding, like, hey, I want to get on this. And I think that really speaks to the culture that Biaggi and even guys before him have created, where like you get a lot of praise and recognition on this Notre Dame team for making plays on special teams, and they want to do it.
Yeah, and he referenced the culture and what they demand, and I'll go back to what we witnessed in August, and I know people get tired of us talking culture, and I've covered a lot of different programs and seen a lot of coaches heavily involved in special teams. I've never seen a coach having his punts blocked the way I saw Marcus Freeman getting his punts blocked in August, and I think there's a resonant lesson there, and we'll expound on that again as the week goes on. But they talk special teams, but they live special teams. And I think there's a big difference there, and we're seeing it pay dividends for the Fighting Irish this year. T.O., as we get ready to wrap up here and look further towards Saturday with the Irish Illustrated Insider podcast, any final thoughts?
If I had a third question today, it was going to be the return of Josh Burnham. I think we know Burnham was hampered in August. We saw the wrap. We saw him sitting out practices. He did play 25 snaps against Miami. They probably really worked to get him available for that game. Played 15 snaps this week. That's the most since the Miami game. I think he adds a presence on that edge. He's not as explosive as some of the other defensive ends. I thought Jordan Botelho had his best game coming back from injury as well. Boubacar Traore was a defensive MVP candidate. That's the position, And Brice Young played one of his better games as well. That's the position I think can really still improve for Notre Dame going forward, especially going into the USC game.
Drew, any closing thoughts from you?
Yeah, I mean, we keep talking about the evolution of the defense under Chris Ash. I think we'd say it's, 9 out of the last 10 quarters have been good. I think we really hear Marcus Freeman, I think for the second week in a row, talk about how he's almost glad he did. Obviously, you don't want to lose those first 2 games, but glad he's seen what Chris Ash will react in when things are going poorly. He's seen him have to handle that and still kind of keep his composure and rally the troops and not things kind of spiral out of control. And now we've seen that he's been able to right the ship, and I'm sure that's something Marcus likes knowing about his coaches, and that's one of the few newer guys on his staff, and he's seen that from him, and we'll see if they can kind of continue that going into NC State this week.
The last several quarters very good for the Notre Dame defense. The last 12 quarters resulting in a 150-40 scoring edge, 140-50 scoring edge for the Irish as they've compiled a 3-game winning streak. That's going to do it for today's edition of Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis. For Drew Mentock, for Tim O'Malley, for Tim Priester once again handling camera duties, I'm John Brice. This has been Irish Illustrated's Instant Analysis, brought to you by the RV Manufactured Housing Hall of Fame and the Northern Indiana Events Center in Sublime, Elkhart, Indiana.